Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of the Pop and Prose podcast. Some of you may have seen my old show. I had two old shows. It's the Gotta Pop podcast, which was all about pop culture, primarily music, movies, TV, those kinds of things. And then I started up the Buddies Book Buddies, where my guest here, Joe Chianakas, was a guest on that show back in August of 2024. And that show briefly changed to Gotta Read. And then I just started a whole new thing where I'm doing stuff on Substack. I'm like, why don't I just do one show instead of two shows? And I already had a newsletter there called Pop and Prose. So I'm using that for the name of this podcast, which is a combination of Gotta Read, Gotta Pop, and Buddies Book Buddies. So now that that's out of the way, I am officially welcoming Joe Chianakas to the show. Welcome to Pop and Prose,
Hey,
Joe.
thanks, buddy. I'm so excited. I'm excited for you. When you have every author in the world wanting to be on this podcast, I'll be like, I was the first.
You were. Yeah, that, hey, hope, that kind of thing can
Yeah.
happen. I'm excited because now it's on, I'm work, like I said, I'm doing stuff on Substack, but the show also, for anyone who's watching or listening to this and you have other places you might want to explore, it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, it's on Amazon, and it's also on Substack. So there we
Amazing.
go. And Joe, when Joe was on the show back in August, we had talked about what was then your new release, and that was the second book in your Unveiling Aiden series, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Singlets and Secrets and Pride and Persistence are both out. That's the Unveiling Aiden series, my queer Karate Kid story. Yeah. And I'm actually editing the third in that right now. So while I'm promoting a new book in a different genre, I'm actually editing the third in Aiden, which is called Fearless and Fabulous, and hopefully will be out by the end of this year. So
Oh, that's
it's a lot of
awesome.
work and a lot of things to juggle right now, but it's
That
been a
is a
lot of
lot to
fun.
juggle. I think when we last spoke, you had either just started writing that or you were in the outlining phase of that, the planning phase, and you've had a lot going on. You've been really, really busy.
I've learned time management is such an important tool, but it's what I teach my students. I just have to apply it to myself. Yes, absolutely.
And you mentioned students. Now I know when we spoke before, you were teaching high school and also sometimes college, right?
Yeah. Well,
Depending on the
so I
grade.
started, I was a high school English teacher for 10 years. And for the last 14, I've been a full-time professor at Illinois Central College in Peoria. So my full-time job is a professor of communication. I also teach some creative writing classes at the graduate level at Southern New Hampshire, which is where we have a connection there too. So
We do
yeah,
have a
I've taught
connection
all
there,
over the
meaning my
place.
my lovely wife Lisa, folks.
Yeah, I got to have Lisa in class, Buddy's wife. That was so cool. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, that really worked out so well because she learned so much from you and she was really enjoying it and she had shown me your books online. I'm like, oh, I got to try to get him on the show. And then we ended up having a blast talking about the Karate Kid movies, Cobra Kai, the Rocky movies, and
Oh yeah, yeah, and we got to be. I mean, being that Cobra Kai just ended, I've got to be careful. I'll be like, I'll talk too much about that. But yes, I loved it. And I just wanted to do with that Unveiling Aiden series. I just wanted to do something for the LGBTQ community, just kind of like the writers of Cobra Kai have done for the Karate Kid fandom. So that's the joy of that. And in fact, after this podcast interview, after we're done recording, I'm driving. Oh, about just an hour out of town, but I'm doing a visit to a Pride club at a junior high and
oh, that's
just trying to
wonderful.
be, yeah, my goal now is I want to be visible. I want to be visible to the community, especially when there are threats to our community at times. I'm just going to get myself out there and talk to these kids and say, I know that there's some scary things going on, but look at me. At least for what it's worth, I try to be someone who's joyful, somewhat successful and visible and authentic at all times. So I'm trying to teach that in my writing and in my visits. So yeah, it's kind of
I
cool.
think that's wonderful. And I know I follow you on social media and I've seen you at different events in the past several months since we first met. And, it's delighted me to see you have good turnouts where you've told me, you've been able to sell a lot of books, but also I think more importantly, just meeting people and interacting and, communicating.
I'm I'm 10 years into the writing career at this point, and so what I want to say to other authors listening, just so you know, I have done events where no one has showed up. I have done events where one or two people showed up. Everything is a process and it takes time and patience and really who has either one of those, but that's
It's
what you
not
got to
easy
remind
sometimes.
yourself of, y'all. This is a big, big process. So I feel really lucky to be where I am now, and I still have quite a few bigger goals than this even, but it's all a process.
Well, speaking of that process, let's talk about the upcoming exciting thing you have going on, and we touched on it briefly. You have a new novel coming out soon, and it is called Darkness Calls.
Yeah,
Correct?
I'm so excited for Darkness Calls. So when I first started writing, I got into the horror genre. I really like spooky stuff. I detoured from that for the Unveiling Aiden series just because I'm very inspired to write in those stories too. But this is sort of like my return to why I started writing in the first place, and that's to scare people and have fun, you know. And so this is Darkness Calls is my monster in the woods story, but I like to describe it as also having horror with heart in the sense that it's not just about jump scares. It's definitely not about jump scares. It's about something much more haunting. And of course, what we all the baggage that we have that we bring into the to reality, I'm going to take that baggage and bring it into a monster fight, and it's really cool.
That sounds really cool. And yeah, I mean, like you mentioned jump scares. I mean, that kind of thing can be fun, and you're watching a horror movie or something like that.
Yeah.
But when there's more, I don't mean to knock those things in any way by saying this, but when there's more substance, like you're talking about, that brings it to a whole other level, which I think really makes it great for a reader or a watcher of a movie or a TV show. And I think that's why some of the more successful ones you've seen that they're not just someone jumping out from behind a corner.
Yeah.
When you have a little bit more there, people can relate to it more, I think.
I sent it out to a bunch of early readers to try to get some reviews here for the release when it comes out, and just the ones that are coming in. And no one's has to do these reviews, right? No one's forced to do them. These are just random connections that I have throughout my life. But I've sent them to some people who like my other stuff, and one person just wrote, every time I put it down, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I always wanted to keep reading more. And that to me is probably the best thing I've read so far because I want something that's not just, oh, that was fun, let me move on to the next thing in my day. I want
Right.
something that kind of sits with you and it's like, what is this about? And what is, because it's not just a monster in the wood, that it's meant to be symbolic of other things. And it's, I just really do hope that people who pick it up, they'll find that. Like some of my favorite reads, have you ever I remember being at work and thinking, I can't wait to get home and see what this character's up to.
Oh
And I
yeah,
know that's geeky, but it's like it would be on my mind all day. And that only happens with a few really good books. So if this
it's
can do
true.
that, I'll be so excited,
Yeah, I love when I grab a hold of a book like that. I've had a couple clunkers in the past several months where I've liked the books well enough, but then I find that I'll read a few chapters and then sit it aside, and then next thing you know, a week has passed because I haven't had that desire to pick it up, and then it takes a month or so to read the book, and
Yeah.
it can still be fine, but the kind that you just described, that's the best.
Yeah.
I
Even if
just
you're
finished
super
a thriller,
busy.
but have you ever heard of Taylor Adams? Have you ever read his books?
No, I haven't read any
Oh,
of Adams.
he's really, really good. I just read a book by him called The Last Word, and
Oh,
it was one of those ones, I couldn't put it down. And I
nice.
did the same thing. I was out yesterday doing something, and I'm like, I just want to go home and finish this book.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
That's
that
my
had to have
favorite
made you feel
time.
so good when you heard that from someone.
It is because I'll be honest. I think I'm more nervous about this book than anything else, just because, to be honest, I've learned a lot about writing, and so I put it into this. It's like this is, the first couple of times you do this, you're learning every step of the way, and right now I'm just at this point. It's like I kind of know what I'm doing now, and I kind of like what I'm
That's
doing. And not
nice.
to say I didn't know before, you know what I mean? But every project it brings a new layer of perspective and insight, and so it's like I want to do 10,000 different things at once, and that's what many writers struggle with. It's like you want to scare, you want to entertain, you want to inspire, you want to make them laugh, you want to make them cry. It's a lot to juggle, but once you start to figure out that formula, I'm excited. I think that it's there. I think that there's a
Oh,
lot of different layers here.
that is
So.
fantastic.
Whew.
And like you said, you know what you're doing. That's because this is not your first book. You've written several novels,
Yeah,
and by now. And I was just going to mention some of the other ones. We mentioned the two books for Unveiling Aiden, and you've got the third one coming up. But also, we talked about this during the last show too. But you had a trilogy of books, which I love the titles and the covers of them. You have the best covers for your books, really. But it was the Rabbit in Red series,
yeah.
right? And
Thank you. I'm
those
lucky
are
to work.
horror as well. correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those were so Rabbit in Red was my very first published book. And yes, it's a scary trilogy. It's meant to be creepy as well, but I would almost call it more like popcorn entertainment. It's the first book in particular is very fun. It's full of riddles and adventure and mystery. And it'll scare you in parts for sure. And I try to get a lot scarier and darker as the series progressed. And I took everything I learned from writing those three Rabbit in Red books and then sat down. So I set myself down and said, okay, how do we do it again, but even better? And that's sort of the challenge for a writer,
Hmm.
right? That like, okay, I've gone through this. Now Darkness Calls is a completely different story. There might be a couple of Easter eggs in there. I like to
Oh,
do,
fun.
I
I
love
love
my
when
Rabbit in
authors do
Red
that.
Easter eggs. And yeah, everything I write, I want to have that sort of Stephen King universe of sorts where at least no, they're not all in the same setting or directly connected or anything like that. But you could draw a map and you could connect some dots and say, oh, this character was at this school at this location and reference this thing, you know. So I'm going to do as many connections as I can like that, which are kind of fun
As
too.
a reader, I love when authors do that. I was
Me
reading one
too.
book recently, and someone had mentioned being in a bar and looking across, and they were describing someone who was sitting at the bar, and I knew who it was because it was someone from one of the other books. They were very vague
Yeah.
about it, where you wouldn't really know that unless you were, a fan of that author and in that universe. But I think that's so cool. I geek out on stuff like that.
Yeah, me too. Like when I was so young reading Stephen King and I didn't know anything and there was no internet at the time, you know. But like when you first started seeing Randall Flagg and different stories, I was like, wait, what? This is so cool. So yeah, I've loved that stuff too.
That's great. And I assume then King was a big influence on you, one of your favorite writers as a young person.
Yeah, not to be cliche, because I do want to be the person who celebrates different types of authors too today. But yeah, I mean, I became hooked instantly. I joined the Stephen King library as soon as I could. It was like the big thing I begged my mom for. I was like 14 years old, and I had read every R.L. Stein and Christopher Pike book, and I was ready for the next level, you know? And so I
Hmm.
was like, "Can I read adult Stephen King?" I was only 14 years old, but can
Oh,
I?
cool.
And she was cool with that. So, you know, as long as I was reading. And then, I mean, I had a 1,000-page book that would keep me up all night long. Yes, please. It was the most magical thing.
That's wonderful.
And so that's kind of why I wanted to write too, is I just wanted to write a story that's entertaining and captivating enough to keep you up at night. Like, I want to make you lose sleep. Why not? That's kind of a fun thing to put on the resume. I deprive people of sleep. Let me put that on there. That would be great, you know?
Now, when did you first try your hand? I know you've been busy, you with your career and everything, but when did you first try your hand at writing? Did you even do that back then when you were a teenager, maybe doing short stories and such?
Oh yeah, so my geeky side is I remember ordering as much as I could from the Scholastic book forums, you know, back
Hmm.
in the day, and I'd take home books on the weekend from that or from the library, and they were again a lot of those young adults, sort of Christopher Pike, not just Pike and Stein, oh Caroline B. Cooney, right, and oh, there's just so many other. I've still got them somewhere because I love those covers too, right? Like that's what they were like old young adult covers and like 80s VHS movie covers, I think are just some of the greatest art
Oh,
out there.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
miss that.
Yeah.
So I started when I was reading those, when I finished, I would try to write my own back of the book blurbs, even in junior high. So
Oh,
I would just, you know, a couple of paragraphs.
yeah.
But that was fun, right? I was like, what if I want to write my own little babysitter murder story and here's how that works. And so yeah, I did that in junior high. In high school, I took a creative writing class and started writing short stories. Really got into that. In college, the same, took a couple more creative writing classes. I always wanted to write and publish. I always had that ambition and desire. But you know, sometimes your talent doesn't necessarily match your
Hmm.
ambition, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I kept learning the arts and the trade, if you will. And I also had this attitude, I think, when I was in my early 20s. It was just like it's not that I didn't think I couldn't write a story, but I felt like I needed to live a little bit more. I
Hmm.
needed to consume. I needed to live. I needed these experiences. If I'm going to write about grief and death. I mean, I'm sorry if you're 14 and haven't experienced it, it's not going to be a very good story. I mean,
Yeah.
no offense to that writer, that young writer. Keep writing because you're going to learn.
Yeah.
But you know, and then you fast forward, becoming an adult, having adult relationships, adult responsibilities, and then the sad things about adulthood, losing parents, losing
Yeah.
loved ones. And now it's like, well, I've lived. I've taken some beatings in life, and I know how to put that into a story. I hope that will be relevant for others inspiring for others so that they feel seen and they see themselves in some of these struggles. You know, so when my mom died of cancer in 2016, and this is the first book I wrote, Darkness Calls, I mean, is the first book I wrote after she passed.
Oh,
And so
okay.
there's very much a connection in there. I have a young character, a very sweet boy named Teddy, whose mom is also dying of cancer in the story. And so that's the parallel there. And so I put that into the book. And what's kind of fun about it, not to spoil it, I won't spoil anything, but for anyone who knows my background and knows how much, I care about my mom and that struggle, there's a really beautiful arc with Teddy and what happens
Oh,
with his
okay.
mom. And I get to do in fiction what you can't do in reality, right?
Isn't
So
that
that's what's
wonderful?
cool.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is cool. Yeah, I'm
So it's a way of celebrating that. It's a way of healing and so many different things too, you know?
yeah. And I know, and that's wonderful. And I know a lot of people, younger artists might not like to hear things like, "Oh, it'll be different when you're older." Because you do want to dive into stuff and that you're passionate about and do it. But what you just said is very true. You learn and you just experience different things. I know I'm working on a story right now where it touches upon some things that happened to me. I'm in my late 50s, but things that happened to me about 10 years ago, and
Yeah,
that I couldn't have written about, authentically when I was in my 20s. I had to go through those
absolutely.
things myself, and that's wonderful. That you've used parts of your life, and like you said, it can maybe put a different spin on them that maybe, you wish you could have done in real life.
Right. Like, there's one thing to experience something and another thing to process it. And it's like so when I write young adult characters, the way that I look at it is, yeah, sure, a teenager and a writer in the early 20s could probably write that story. And I don't mean to diminish anybody's ambition, but also I think you just lived it. When you give yourself a little bit of space from that time, now you can understand it and process it. And I think that's going to be a much better story of someone who's experienced it and sort of thought about it and processed what that life is like at that time. And so, yeah, keep writing and shoot for the stars and send your books to agents and publishers at any age. Sure, go for it. But I do think be patient with yourself too and
Yeah,
allow yourself just to live. Like,
yeah.
I remember having a conversation with a really good friend. I'm actually going to see her today. And then one of the conversations, I always wanted to write, and we went to school together. And I'd say things like, I'm just not quite ready to write my novel yet. I feel like I just got to live a little bit more before I think I have something better to offer than what's currently on the shelves. Like, there's just so many good things out there as it is. It's like, how do I stand among these great authors until I've lived some great experiences, you know?
Right, and that's a wonderful way to look at things. And I think with each book too, I know this I haven't published anything yet, but I'm working on a novel right now that I'm pretty excited about. But I
Yay.
know, yeah, it's
No,
a
I'm happy for you.
oh well, thank you. But yeah, I mean, I think some things too, you've got to do them, when the time is right for them. I know you can. I've tried multiple times to like sit down and say, okay, it is January 1st. I've been told like Stephen King says he can write a book in 90 days, so I'm
Ugh.
going to be finished this by March 1st. And
Yeah.
you have to set. I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, setting goals I think is wonderful. I mean, that helps me as someone with ADHD. That helps me immensely in a lot of ways. To have kind of like a little framework and goals to work towards, but they've got to be realistic goals too. And especially with something like writing or I think anything in the arts, you've got to give yourself some grace on things.
Yeah, exactly. Give yourself some time. I get a little jealous of Stephen King, for yeah, when you can do this completely full time and
Yeah.
probably have the resources. I'd love to be able to sit down and write full time, but I get a little jealous of those things, but at the same time, you're right. You have to discipline, at least create some sort of system for yourself. And I don't think, you have to do it in 90 days. You can do it in a year,
Yeah, exactly.
I like to look at I try to do about 70,000 word rough draft first manuscript minimum. I like to write about 1,000 words in one sitting. So I take 70 days.
Oh, well,
And
that's
like you said,
great.
but have to spread those out. I can't necessarily write every single day, 70 days consecutively because of work and life and other responsibilities. But if you
Right.
can do that 3 to 4 times a week, then you get that
Yeah.
book done in 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
King. I remember reading before he said that he wrote every day except for on his birthday. I heard him
Yeah.
say that, and then I later heard him years later say, "I actually lied about that. I still write on my birthday too, but I thought I should just say something."
That's funny. That's funny. But it's also really cool because it shows, I think, he's just one of those unique talents that is unmatched. And when you have that motivation to write like that every day too, I mean, that really shows who
Yeah.
you are.
It does, and it
Yeah.
shows like the love of what you're doing. I'll see that with. I follow. Are you familiar with the band Journey? I'm sure you are.
Oh
Everyone.
yeah, I saw them live
Oh, awesome! Yeah, I've seen
just
them
a
live
year or
too.
two ago.
Oh, great! Yeah, they put on a great live show, folks. If you haven't seen Journey, go see them while you have a chance. But Neil Sean, their guitarist, who's been with them since the very beginning, he'll post videos online of him just practicing on his guitar. And here's a guy who's been a professional guitarist since the late '60s, even before Journey, when he was part of Santana. But he still practices all the time, and you see him just loving what he's doing. I think that's the thing, whether you're a writer or a musician or any kind of art, if you've got that love, you
Yeah.
you will want to do it every day or as much as you can.
I know this is a calling for me because I am depressed, literally depressed when I don't have time for it. And it makes me a little cranky, to be honest, when it's like, okay, well, I've got this huge list of responsibilities. When am I writing? When do I get to sit down and have a little creative fun time? And I know that's a first world problem, right? Absolutely it is. But at the same time, it also shows me what I care about. It's a compass, right? This
Yeah,
points me in the direction I want to be writing. I want to be telling stories. It's an escape in so many different ways from reality. And also, I just want to contribute to the world. I want to, and maybe it's a little ego insane. You want your name on a book that's on a bookshelf or whatever, but I just want to be a part of the storytelling experience and
that's
get myself
wonderful.
out there. So yeah, I think anyone who relates to that, it's just again, it kind of comes back to that time management, figure it out. Sometimes I only get 3 to 4 days a weekend where I get to sit down and write, but I get 3 to 4 days a week, where I'm
Yeah.
writing an hour a day. That's great. I'll take it.
Now, let me ask you this, and I apologize to people who are not writers. I know I'm like writer centric here, but one other writing related question. When you're doing a book, like you had told me, I can't remember if we said it during this show or if we did it pre-show, but there's going to be another book that comes out after Darkness Calls that I assume you're working on now,
So this
right?
is a duology.
It's a
Yes, it's meant to be a
duology. Okay.
two-parter. Yep.
Yeah. But when you're doing something like, that the first book or the second that you're working on, how much do you go into it with much of an outline, or do you have to have things pretty well figured out before you start? I know some
Boy,
people just like to fly by the seat of their pants and
I'm sort of a hybrid model when it comes to that.
hmm
So I like to outline the basic conflict. So I want what's my big what if statement? What's the big conflict and who are the main characters and what do they want and what's keeping them from getting what they want. So I kind of sit down and think about that. What do they want? What are they going for? What's going to keep them from getting what they want? What are the big obstacles? And so then I try to outline almost 3 acts.
okay.
I heard a phrase beautifully once, so I'm stealing this from someone. Apologies to not give them credit, but I can't remember where I heard it. But it was the first act is you figure out your story enough to say, all right, we are going to chase our character up a tree. We're going to make it hard.
Okay.
They get then the second act, and probably more than the second act. Now they're stuck in that tree. Let's make life even worse for them. We're throwing rocks at them. We're really trying to
I
get
love
them.
this.
Yeah, and then in your third act, figure out how you're bringing them down, if you're bringing them down safely. And I like that. So I think about, okay, what's the big climax going to be? But I'll tell you what, I no, I never stick to that outline. I've
I've heard
tried.
that from a lot of writers.
Yeah, if you force it, I think it comes out poorly. I think if you
Yeah.
force yourself to write that way, then you're stifling your own creativity. The
hmm
best part for me is when I surprise myself, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh wow, like one of my favorite characters in Darkness Calls did not exist in the first draft
Oh,
at
really?
all. So I wrote an entire draft without my one of my favorite characters even in it, and I sat and thought about like, okay, there feels like there's something missing from the story I want to tell. And then I thought, what's the missing piece? Is it part of the plot? Is it a setting issue? What's going on? And that takes patience and thought and self-reflection and maybe some editorial feedback too. But the conclusion I came to was, I need a new character, and I don't even want her to be human.
Oh,
That's what I need in Darkness
oh,
Calls. I need someone who's not fully human,
oh, that's
and that's going
intriguing.
to elevate my story to where I want to take it. And
Oh,
so I
excellent.
rewrote it with this brand new character that just completely surprised me. And then I always knew it was going to be a two-parter. And part of it was with my publisher. We have certain word counts. It's to print 1,000 page fantasy novel costs a lot, right? So they try to keep it kind of short. And the way I actually looked at my story is let's just cut it in half. You're getting part one. I've already written part two.
Oh,
It's still
okay.
in it's in editing, but I mean, I like to make sure that the next book is done before the previous one comes out, at least a draft.
That makes a
And then
lot of
that
sense.
if I'm doing a series, because then I
Yeah.
feel kind of comfortable where I'm going and whatnot. But yeah, so it's kind of a blend, and it's not. I don't think it's hopefully for those who are listening who aren't writers, you can apply this to any sort of creative
Yeah, you
medium.
can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And yeah, I think what you were talking about there, the whole, the whole tree analogy, that's great. And you can see that not just in horror novels, but you look at any story, you can look at a romance story and you see the same thing. Usually like midway through the story, there's some sort of conflict that comes in,
Hmm.
whether it's an ex-love or someone trying to keep you apart from the person that you want to be with. And same for sci-fi. There's something comes in, something will like get in Luke Skywalker's way and he has
Yeah.
to deal with it. So that's wonderful.
Here's my other formula. Comes
Conflict is crucial.
Conflict is crucial. My other favorite formula is very simple, and it comes from R.L. Stein. There are three parts to a story: the beginning, the middle, and the twist.
Yes. Oh,
So
I love
I
that.
love the twist. So, and I'm a
Yeah.
big twist person, even in the Aiden series. Huge twist at the end every single time with a character. That just I think it's kind of fun and surprising. And in Darkness Calls, oh, you're going to get to an ending that I hope that you just send me a message right away and threaten me to get that you need the second book right away.
Oh,
And that's kind of what I hope the threat is.
oh, that
No
is
other threats,
awesome.
please.
Yeah.
No
Now I'm
other threats. But
excited.
say
I'm
I need
extra
that
excited
second
for
book
it.
because I'm gonna throw a little twist at you, and and you might throw the book at me, but in a good way.
Oh,
In a
I
good
love
way.
twists. I know. Have you seen the series Severance?
Oh yes, I haven't seen the second season yet, but I'm
Oh,
waiting for it
oh,
all to
okay.
come out.
We just started watching it, and we started watching it, I guess, 2, 3 weeks after the second season started. So we went back and, of course, and watched the first season. But then we just binged it, and boy, they throw a lot of neat twists in there. And Lisa and I, at the end of it, that's my wife, folks. At the end of the shows, we're just like, we want the next episode now. We
Yeah.
really want it now. It's
Severance is beautiful. I am
brilliant.
glued to that screen. You talk about
Yeah.
a captivating storytelling just from the opening moments till the end. At least in the first season, I loved it, and that's the only reason I'm holding off is I'll be so excited. I kind of like to consume an episode a day once I get into a series, and I don't want to have to wait. So I am definitely I wait till the whole season's done and then I'd start watching.
One of my friends is
Yeah.
doing the exact same thing. He's waiting until it's all done so he can just have a weekend where he goes crazy.
Yeah. I blame Netflix, right? They gave us this model of
Yeah.
dropping entire seasons, and then these other networks, and even Netflix at times now does parts, and it kind of everything goes back
Yeah,
and
it's
forth.
it's weird now when you have to wait a week.
Yeah, like
Like, wait, I had to
absolutely
do
not.
this
I
for
didn't need
most of
that
my
too.
life. Why am I so angry about this now? But it's fun.
Yeah, it
It's
is
fun.
fun.
And so Darkness Calls, like I said, is coming out on March 4th. I don't know if you have a copy around there, but I love the cover of that.
Yeah. Um,
Oh, I can see it. Yeah.
yeah, let me bring it in. If you can see this. So yeah, this is a hardcover edition. It's my first hardcover edition.
Oh, that's
Um,
exciting. Oh,
so I was like, I get a hardcover release. Look at the back. This is the scariest part.
what's
That's
the shirt
me.
say? I read banned books.
Read banned
Oh, read
books.
banned books. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
All of you follow
So they
that
got my
advice.
picture on it. We're going to do a paperback version very quickly, though. I actually just got the layout for that to approve last week, and that'll come out over the summer. But yeah, my imprint is Rogue River imprint through Rowan and Weatherford Publishing. And, I didn't get a hardcover release for the Aiden series just because they don't often do that for young adult, I guess, at that level. But for this book, they wanted to do a hardcover. And so to me, it's really exciting. It's pricier, but it's beautiful. And
It's
there is an ebook
beautiful
version,
cover,
of
and
course.
yeah, the back
Yeah.
picture is really cool too, Joe. I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of okay. And we're going to do a full author photo on the back, but it takes me back to the old school Stephen King hardcovers just to
Yeah.
make a connection. And that's sort of was the dream, right? Like, I don't know how much you can see off to my left, but that's my entire Stephen King library
Okay,
right
I thought
there.
I saw some familiar titles there.
Yeah, yeah. And if I just pull one randomly, here's different seasons, and then there's the Stephen King photo. So I kind of always wanted a book like that. And
That
now
is
I kind of
awesome.
have it. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. It looks like he's got one of his children there with him, and of course now two of his sons I know are writers themselves.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's just inspiring. It's really
Yeah.
cool, you
Now,
know.
I've
I think of
actually just starting to get into Stephen King, believe it or not. I've only read maybe 4 or 5 of his novels. And a few months back, I read Mr. Mercedes, and I just devoured that. And I've,
yeah.
it's funny, Lisa and I are really goofballs with books because we'll see one book in a series we think looks good. So naturally, we'll go and buy the entire series without even having read the first book yet. And sometimes that doesn't work out so well. But in this case, it did because I've got like the other 2 books in this. And I know that there's a character named Holly who's in other books. So I've got like all these books just waiting for me. And I can't wait to dive back into them. Mr. Mercedes, I loved. Loved.
Well, just so you all know, you're your favorite. You are author's favorite type of customers, right? Of readers. Just get the whole series when you come by. You know, just to be safe, might as well have them all. No, I agree. Holly, I actually the last book I read because you know, I feel like I've read every Stephen King book, but you miss some as adults
Yeah, of
at this
course.
point in my life. But the last one I read, I skipped Holly originally or missed it, and I just read that a few months ago, and it was great.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's an
Holly's
interesting
great.
character.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun, and she's a lot of fun on screen too. I don't know if you've seen the Max adaptation of The Outsider.
I was
It's
waiting because I wanted to read the book first.
yeah, definitely read the book first, and then
Yeah.
I still haven't seen the adaptation of Mr. Mercedes, and I'm curious about that. And what's cool is the two very different versions of Holly, played by two different actresses as well in those. So I'll be very curious how they portray Holly in the Mercedes series compared to The Outsider.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Yeah, I read
Yeah.
a short story anthology of King. I think is it called "If It Bleeds." I think it came out a
Oh
year or so
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
And the only story I didn't read in there featured Holly because I kind of want to
Oh.
read all of Holly's story in order. I'm that kind of, yeah, I'm that kind of nerd. You know, I want to read things in order.
Exactly, and I love like when he, at least in his author's notes, he talks about how he just can't let this character go, and he loves her,
That's great.
and it became one of his favorite characters. That inspires me as an author because you want your, I want to spend time with these characters that
Hmm.
we've created, and it is kind of exciting. Like with the Aiden series, I guess it's those characters for me right now. I finished three. We're gonna go ahead and do a fourth and final book in that series, which isn't written at all yet. But I'm letting that kind of simmer just because I'm really excited. This is probably gonna be my last round of playing with these characters.
Yeah.
So I'm taking my time, but and I want to make sure I'm not busy. I'm gonna try to schedule it just right. Is the least busy part of my year, at least with teaching, and then I want to dive in and just give them the most fun final ending I can and
Well,
have a really fun,
that's
just hang out,
very
you know, like
exciting. That's
kind
great.
of like, yeah, just like we want to get back to spending time with a character. I want to make sure it feels like that when I'm writing too. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Then who knows what you'll get into next, right? Maybe it'll be another horror novel,
Yeah,
or
I know
you
what it
probably have
is, and it's
ideas.
actually written. I do have a draft of something. Well, I'll tell you. I mean, I haven't even given this. Well, no, that's not true. My agent has seen it,
Oh, okay.
and
I was going to get a world
knows that
exclusive
it
here.
exists, and we're having some conversations here and there. I just got to be careful. But I got to work. It needs some work, but it started as a version of something called Summer of '95. You know, I just wanted to do a '90s murder mystery.
Oh, nice.
You know how 80s was so big for it and still is. Like everyone does a throwback to 80s culture
Oh,
now, and I
yeah.
think
You see it
90s
all the
is getting
time.
that.
Yeah.
Now, actually, now that I think about it, of course, 90s culture is getting a lot of that too. I think it evolves, right? But I wanted to do my own spin, so I wanted to do a 90s murder mystery. But of
Oh.
course, I'm gonna gay it up a little bit too. But so my first draft was just called Summer '95, and now I think I want to make a pun and connect it to the Karate Kid universe. Here you go, and it's gonna be called a cruel. You know the song "A Cruel Summer."
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Bananarama.
I want it to be
Yeah.
called a instead of a cruel summer, the way the song goes, that's in the Karate Kid. That's how nerdy I am. I love the Bananarama song, Cruel Summer. Not to anger any Swifties, but when I saw that there was a Taylor Swift song called Cruel Summer, I got very excited, listened to it, and then thought, what the heck is this? This is
Yeah.
not my Cruel Summer. I thought you were doing my Cruel, the one I love from Bananarama.
It's a
Anyway,
great
all
song.
that yeah, all that to say, it's either going to be called a cruel summer or a cruel queer summer, to be very obvious. And it's going to deal with a murder that takes place in a neighborhood, kind of a Burb style, if you know the Tom Hanks movie. I
Oh,
love that
yeah.
one too. Like a
Oh,
little
yeah.
90s neighborhood, but
Oh, that was a
diverse
great, quirky
characters, murder
movie.
mystery. Yeah, so I'm really excited for that one too. And I
Oh,
just
that's
want to write in different
great. Oh, I
genres and
love the
whatnot.
possible titles there. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm always got something in the works, and that's the perk, right? Like you want to be thinking what's next, and
Yeah,
while you're on the current project, because I think it helps fuel creativity across the stories, and I think it helps me to write in different genres and different themes and different all sorts of things, because then it's like new gasoline. It's just a new flavor. It's like going out to eat at a new restaurant, and
right.
it's like this is exciting. This is something different, and it kind of rejuvenates you. I think that's why I like jumping around in the genres and the storytelling too.
That's great. And your passion for the things that you've written and are writing is very, very evident. And that's awesome. That's a
Well, thank you.
you're welcome. I mean, I can tell that, how happy you are and just excited you are. And, that's what you want to see from an artist. Someone who is just doing it because I'm just going to do this because, I know I'll get paid such and such money for it. And,
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. Whatever gets your works written and whatever you got to do. But I love seeing someone who's excited about the work that they're doing. So, and I
Yeah,
wish
because
you
I
the best
mean,
of luck with Darkness Calls. It looks great.
I'm really excited for it. And it's taken years. Again, another thing for any creative is that it's not like I was always or am getting huge paychecks. It's taken years, 10 years to get to where I am right now. And like I said, I still feel like I'm just barely touching, scratching the surface as to where I want to go. But yeah, Darkness Calls without I'll just say this. This was the cool message I got the other day. So we're doing a pre-order campaign. I have no idea how the sales are going. I've just been saying it's up for pre-order. Anybody can order it. Normally you just look at sales on day one. Well, I would have been happy if it had hit like 25 copies or 50 copies or
Hmm.
like, God, let's go for 100. 100 people who get excited and want to pre-order this in advance. I mean, I don't want to jinx anything, but we're in the thousands. And I'm just
Wow.
like, I mean, we have more orders than I have friends on social media, you know what I mean? And
That's awesome.
followers. And so it's like, something's happening, and that's really exciting because you just never know, I think, what might be the tipping point, so to speak. And I think when you've been working in so many different projects and you got relationships with different publishers and bookstores, maybe I'm just really crossing my fingers. I think this one's doing really well, and
That's
as long
great.
as it's received just as well, I'm ecstatic. The sales, they don't matter. The paychecks don't matter. You can't get into writing. You can't get into a creative industry like this thinking I'm relying on this for income necessarily. Of
Yes.
course, we want to dream. We want to shoot for the
Yeah,
who
of
doesn't?
course.
I'd love to have a second vacation. I'd love to have a second home or a vacation
Yeah,
home or something. Whatever. We can shoot for the stars. Sure, let's do
exactly.
that. But
Nothing wrong with
but
shooting for
you
the
got to do it
stars.
for fun.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
do. You do. And that's what I love seeing too from like, someone like a Stephen King who never has to write another word if he doesn't want to. You can tell he's still having fun. A musician like Paul McCartney, who's 82 years old, who is still out there jamming, he doesn't need to do anything. But he's having fun and he's living his passion.
Those are the exact artists I look up to in terms of I'm not out here trying to flaunt whatever record sale or bestseller there is or how much I'm making. They've already made it and they just want to keep contributing, and that's the beauty of it.
It
Yeah.
is. It's really beautiful. And Joe, I'm excited for you. I'm looking forward to reading this book very, very soon, and it's going to be fun for me too. When I maybe think I know who the character is that you were talking about. The alien or whatever it was that came in there. I don't want to know exactly what it is, but
Oh, well, she's the first page.
oh, okay.
She's got the first line of dialogue. I even changed, so you'll meet her, and her line, her the first line of my story comes from this different character that was introduced as I revised it, and she says it to my main character, and she says, "It wants us to kill again."
Ah,
And I love a good opening sentence, and
that's the opening sentence. That's
that's the opening
fantastic.
sentence. It wants us to kill again.
Beautiful. I
And
love
yeah,
that.
my publisher, I mean, obviously, but they wrote back and they were like, this from the first sentence, this is the type of book we've been wanting to get. And my editor, I love this story for what it's worth. Who edited Darkness Calls? His name's George Clay Mitchell. And he's just a delightful human being. And I've worked with lots of great editors, including Lindsay Flanagan, who works on my Unveiling Aiden series, and she's delightful as well. But here's the story I like to tell you, okay?
Yeah,
So
sure.
Darkness Calls, when George edited it, when he got to the end, I've never had this kind of compliment before, so I'm just going to say it. And can I swear? I
Yeah,
forget. This is
absolutely.
brand new, episode one, so
Yeah,
I'm
fuck
gonna
yeah, do
drop
it.
a.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. But he wrote back in all caps, two words, "fucking banger."
Ah, nice.
And I was just like, are you serious? And sometimes I'm like, are people just being nice or whatever? Well, here's the story. He read Pride and Persistence, my second Unveiling Aiden story, and in one of its draft forms, of a much earlier draft than what came out. And I asked him, what did you think of the ending? What did you think of this one? He did not say fucking banger. He's a sports guy, right? And he said, well, I'd give the ending of Pride and Persistence in its draft form a double. He said, your first book in Unveiling Aiden Singleton's and Secrets, that was a home run. Not every book needs to be a home run. Not every ending needs to be a home
Yeah.
run, was what he said. And I was like, okay, I don't like that. This cannot my ending. I love Pride and Persistence, that book so much. Like my ending is not a damn double
Double.
on a baseball field.
Right.
So again, but that was the motivation because I trusted that feedback and I really appreciated the honesty. So I went and revised it and gave an ending that I think is really beautiful. And one of my favorite reviews is quoting the ending that said, I didn't know Joe had it in him, but damn, that ending got me.
That's
And that comes
great.
from from a librarian that runs a LGBTQ book club, and just the fact that I hopefully that ending is at least a triple, if not a home run in Pride and Persistence. But the whole point of the story is I believe George then on Darkness Calls because that okay, I trust him to give that compliment when he can be so honest elsewhere. And the other cool thing is, I don't know what it is about the phrase fucking banger, but I had a early reader also write that in their review. Like this was a fucking banger, that ending. Oh my
Oh,
God.
nice.
So I'm like, I'm really excited. I do hope it lives up to that.
Oh,
I
that's
don't,
fantastic.
yeah, it's difficult as a writer sometimes because you want to go to sell a book. You want to be like, guys, this is gonna be the best thing you've ever read. I am so excited for it, and I am. And at the same time, though, I want people to also come in not with overly unrealistic
Yeah.
expectations.
That
Like
can hurt,
so
whether it's a book or a
excited.
movie or something. If, you've
Yeah,
heard,
have you
you're
ever
like,
gone
oh,
in?
it's so great, it's so great, it's so great. And then you're expecting the
Yeah,
greatest thing in the world. But I'll tell you, I'm excited for it. And just like your opening line there, I know just thinking about times where I've, wandered around bookstores, just randomly picking up books. That's the kind of line that makes you buy a book, because it's like, oh, what the
yeah.
hell's going to happen now?
Right. So there's a whole and I don't like writing in flashbacks. If I do anything, they're very brief moments, but it sets it up that there's this huge past to this story too, and I love kind of just throwing it. I love jumping right into it. And it is like again, just something really aspiring for writers and authors. You'll always remember your worst reviews. I'll tell you that. You'll always remember your worst reviews. I wish I
Hmm.
could forget them, but I can't. And I remember someone once writing about Rabbit and Red, my first book. Um, Something like, I don't even remember what good thing they said because all I can remember is the bad. So, but it started with something kind of complimentary, but then it ended with, but the writing's not going to win any awards, I'll tell you that. And I was like, ouch,
Oh, yeah.
but again, first book, everyone's entitled to a perspective and an opinion. No, no big deal. I get that. I was like, that hurt a little bit. Well, I'll tell you, my agent, Amy Brewer at Metamorphosis Literary Agency, she emailed me last week and said, Joe, you need to make sure that we're getting this submitted for the Bram Stoker Award. So that's the biggest
Wow.
award in horror,
Yes,
and
it
it's
is.
a whole process in and of itself. I'm not even it's not even on my radar right now. I've got too many other things to do. But the fact that I have an agent who thinks this is worthy of the highest award that our genre offers
Yeah.
just
Oh,
really
wow.
reminds me of that first review and reminds me to tell other creatives, you know what? Number one, you aren't going to be successful until you get some bad reviews. If
Hmm.
what scares if you see a book or something reviewed that's all 5 stars and
Yes.
nothing else,
Mm,
I have some
yeah.
questions,
Yeah, I
right?
do too. Because then you think, okay, how many of their friends and relatives are doing this for them? And maybe they're all sincere, maybe they're all legit. But yeah, I want to
Yeah.
see a mixture there.
So you get a couple of those bad ones to balance it out, and that's the reality. I mean, as much the things that we love, there are people who don't. Again, we talked about Cobra Kai earlier, and you talked about watching the first season with your wife. Like, not everyone's going to give it the 5 billion stars that I would.
Yeah,
Some people are going to
exactly.
say this just isn't for me, and that's okay. So I want to tell creatives out there too to have a thick skin, but remind yourself that those bad reviews are actually going to help push you into the spotlight, I think,
Hmm.
because it's going to be more balanced. And then it also gives you something to kind of compete for. Like, I don't want to compete with anybody else in the world except myself. So my only competition is that Darkness Calls is a better written story than the previous ones. And
That's
if it
great.
can be at that level to get to something like the Bram Stoker, that would be amazing. But at least I have there's someone in my corner who thinks it's worth that, and that's really cool. That's exciting, and that's
That's
all I
very
need,
exciting. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, Joe, again, I wish you the best with it. I'm excited to read it. And where can people find you online? I mentioned before that you were on social media, and we all know social media has changed a lot recently, but I know you're still around.
Yeah, I'm doing. I mean, I have a lot of opinions on that too, but I guess let's not go into that. Yeah,
We'll talk after I
I
hit
got
the
an
stop
audience.
button.
You've got to use the platform you have
Yeah.
and the channels that you have to connect with people. So I am I'm most active on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And
Okay.
if you search for Joe Chianakas, and again, it's spelled weird, right? But for anyone listening, Chianakas. But I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. I still have a Twitter, or excuse me, an X account, but I put in my profile. Musk sucks. Find me elsewhere. So there it is. I'll just say that. I'm sorry. I couldn't help
I'm close to
myself.
doing
I'm
that
so tired of it.
myself
I'm not.
there.
I deleted the app off my phone. I want
Oh, that's
nothing to
smart.
do with it. I'm sorry, y'all. I can't. I
It's
can't
hard.
even stomach it. But find me elsewhere, and I promise. Again, if you know me, I'm just someone who fights for inclusivity, kindness, compassion. And if you're thinking, oh, that sounds terrible. Well, we're not going to have anything in common to talk about, so move along. But yeah, I would love
And
people
move
to
along
follow
from
it.
this
Just
show
to,
too. I mean, I'm with Joe. I'm with Joe on those things.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just I don't
Yeah.
have the time or the energy for it anymore. I did my first TED Talk Wednesday night,
I saw
uh,
you
two,
post about that. That had to have
two
been a
nights
blast.
ago. Yeah. It was like a bucket goal for me as I'm a communication professor, right? I always wanted to do this. And speaking of just lots of cool connections. It was really, you talked about like people who've been doing something over and over again, but still trying to get better at it. I've been a teacher for 24 years, but the cool thing was is I took this speech I was doing and I practiced in front of my classes this week, and I let them give me feedback and I let them critique me, and I think they really liked being a part of that process. That was kind of fun.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
but the point is, even in the TED Talk, I made a moment to say, I want you all to know that I'm a proud member of and advocate for our LGBTQIA plus community, and every single letter in that is important and valuable and not going anywhere. And that's why I'm doing things like this, so that I can also be a visible, authentic version, I hope, of myself for those who need it. And so I am really annoyed at the individuals who are just for no reason coming after members of my community, and that's
Yeah,
completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable.
no, it's
So they
completely
become the
unacceptable.
villains in my story. That's all. We'll have some fun that way. So maybe they'll be
Yeah.
the ones that
Oh,
the
times are
darkness.
really. ah, It's just.
But that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to say, like,
Yeah.
in terms of
Like you said, we
social.
could probably have a very long discussion about that. Uh, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really excited for you that you did that the other night, the TED
And yeah,
Talk.
and I wanted to take a moment. That was the thing. Like, this is probably my one TED Talk, right? I've made jokes. We've all joked, like, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I
Yeah,
almost posted
yeah,
it that way. I was like, guess what? I can say this for real now. Thank you for
yeah.
coming to my TED
That's
Talk.
so
But
great. That's so
I
great.
wanted to make sure if there was one chance for me to be in the spotlight, that I remind myself and my readers and the people that I care about why this matters. That, if Darkness Calls becomes a best-selling novel, if it changes my life or if it doesn't, that's great. But at all times, no matter what the cost, I think artists, I mean, I'm not going to be a writer, a creative, or a teacher if I can't be the authentic version of
Yeah.
myself. And if my community is getting attacked, then I got to say something about it in every aspect I can. So if I lose a couple of readers, see ya.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not too worried.
Yeah,
Yep.
you have to be true to everything that's important to you, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope so. I think so. I don't know. Stephen King just rejoined X. Did you see that
I just
announcement?
saw that this morning. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm back. Did you miss me or something like
Yeah, so
that?
I didn't again I haven't been on there that
Yeah.
I thought he was one of the few that I followed because he was very funny
Yeah.
and very like-minded. He liked to go after Elon a lot, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't blame him.
Yeah, I followed him
Um,
to Blue Sky or Threads wherever he went, and
yeah, and so I'm trying to get active on Blue Sky, and I think I've got like 40 followers.
yeah, well,
It's
yeah,
you're on there as well. I think we
yeah,
follow
yeah,
each other on
yeah.
there,
So follow
so
us both on Blue Sky, folks.
yeah.
Blue Sky's kind
I
of fun.
just
It's taken me a little while to get into it, but it's they've got a lot of fun communities there. I do like different challenges, music related challenges. They've got book related challenges, and just play around with it a little bit. It's different than was, but it's
It's
fun.
worth thinking, just in general, no matter what viewpoint you have about the world. I think it's worth reflecting on how your social media feed and the algorithms that influence it shape the perception that we have of others in our lives and reality in general. And we're all living in an echo chamber at this point. On Facebook and Instagram in particular, you are seeing the things that they want you to see, that it's
Yeah.
just about keeping you there, right? So they're
Yeah.
only going to show you stuff that keeps you coming back. They're
Yeah.
not going to show you opposing viewpoints or other things that you don't like because that might drive you away from the site. So something like Blue Sky, I appreciate at least in knowing that it's not forcing an algorithm on you.
Right.
It's allowing
Exactly.
you to create that. And that was what I really appreciate about that because again, social media is very new to us, right? 20 years?
Yeah, I know. It's
Not
kind of
even
hard to
that.
believe when you say a number like that, but it's true. I
Yeah.
mean,
It was
and
2003 when I had my first MySpace. So it was 2003. I mean, that's
yeah.
doesn't seem that long ago to me.
And you got
And
to
so we
find what
just got to
works
get
for
used to it.
you and be happy with. I mean, it's hard because, like we said, things have changed around a lot. My wife, Lisa, she just recently, because of a lot of the things that have been going on in the world and with the owners of these different platforms, she decided to leave Facebook because some things there were frustrating her. She also left Instagram, and now she's only got Blue Sky, and I think maybe one other thing. And
Yeah.
she said she feels like a sense of relief in some ways because she would
Yeah.
go on and see like and X too. She left that. She see a lot of hostility and. That's hard. You kind of want to go into these places to have a good time. And yes, for some it's a source of news and different kinds of information, but you got to do what suits you, folks. I don't mean to sound preachy,
Yeah.
but.
If social media is actually depressing people or making them angry, then I hope we have enough common sense to say, yeah, exactly. Time to get rid of it then.
Yeah,
Time to take a break from it at least
yeah,
in whatever capacity. And I think about that a lot too. Again, philosophically, I'd like to get rid of Facebook and Insta, but
yeah,
that's where I have my biggest audience and I like connecting with them. So it's a conundrum, right?
yeah.
But stick with it for now, and hopefully that it won't always be this way. I think we got a lot of strong
Exactly,
voices. The
exactly.
pendulum swings back and forth.
Yeah,
We're swinging in one direction. We'll get it back.
yeah, and do what makes you happy too. Like for me, I was addicted to CNN for the longest time. I would have it on hours and hours every day, and because of different things that I don't like that have been going on in the news, I just had to tune out from that. So I've barely been watching it, but I'm reading books more. So I'm spending much more
Yeah.
time reading books now. And yes, you want to be informed, but you also have to find peace and happiness. So it's important to do that.
It is. And just again, you become what you consume. That's
Yeah.
important to remember. And maybe people forget that if all and I like CNN, so forgive me for saying this, but I think if all we ever watch is CNN, then then we have one very specific perspective, and I don't want to just be one thing. It just the only reason I said that is it reminds me. I go to the gym near my house, and there's this guy. There's this guy who walks around the track and turns every single TV to Fox
Oh, are
News.
you serious?
And I just start fuming out my ears. I'm just
Uh,
like, what? So I've become the guy. I'm like, I'm sorry. I am a communication professor, and I promise you that if all you do is consume Fox News, you will have a right-wing perspective of the world. And I don't want to say that all right-wing perspectives are bad,
no.
but you should have more than just that perspective.
Yeah.
So I'm the one who goes back, and I don't even care. I followed right after him and started changing the channels. I'm like,
That's fantastic. I
come
love
at me,
that.
I'm doing this for the peace of mind at our gym that we
Yeah.
don't all need. You can have your own TV, but why are you turning 20 of them to the same? That's
Yeah,
the
that's
problem
a
with
bit
anybody
much.
who becomes a little radicalized. It becomes
Yeah.
so obsessive and extreme, and that's why we are where we are today. I think is we've certain individuals have become so radicalized they can't see anything else but what they want to see.
Yeah, and I think it's like I think you hit one thing on the nail fantastically there is that I don't know, I just screwed up that phrase, but I don't care. Is that
I get
it's
you.
good to have different sources for things. Now, I don't want CNN viewers to be mad at me for having said that. I still watch them, but I'm
Yeah.
also spending time. I have Apple News, so I go on there and read from multiple different news sources. New York. It's good to broaden your horizons some. So, like you said, you have a broader view and
Right.
understanding of things that are going on. So
It's
yeah,
just, again,
CNN. If you want to advertise on the show, go for it. It's cool.
absolutely. Of course. And yeah, you should look up the media bias chart. I share that with my classes. For anyone concerned
Oh,
about or interested in this, there's a media bias chart, and you can just Google that. And I know that there are people who also argue against it when they see that the things they love are far right or far left. But like at the very top centers, the Associated Press, the AP.
okay.
The Associated Press is the most neutral and unbiased. They're just reporting what the news is. And then from there, it's a really interesting chart because it shows that the news organizations, they basically all take from that same source. But then, Fox is very, very far on the right. MSNBC is very, very far on the left. CNN's only a little bit, it skews left, but it's not actually that far left
Hmm.
on this chart. And so again, it's just maybe people need to look that up and be like, what information are you getting? And not trying to be judgmental, honestly, about this, because I think sometimes we don't even stop to think. We just see something. It's the old saying, I saw it on TV or I saw it on the internet,
Hmm.
but we've got
Yeah.
to really make sure that we're understanding, but who's sharing that? And do you understand that they have points of view and perspectives and someone's giving them a paycheck who has their point of view and perspective,
Yeah.
all of that is
Exactly.
connected. And so if we see through that, then maybe if nothing else, we can at least be curious
Hmm.
about other points of view and not be so judgmental. I think that's just where I'd like to
Yeah.
go to is just that whole be
Yeah.
curious, not judgmental. That's my idea. And I
Yeah.
know I said
Love
some
that.
things that were probably judgy earlier, but I
No,
draw a
but
line when it comes to human rights. And that's
yeah.
where it is.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be
Exactly.
curious and judgmental until you take away my human right or diminish me as a person or my community. And then there's the line. It's very
Yeah.
clear. Go
Yeah.
across that, you know? There it is.
I love
Sorry,
it.
we
We've
can talk
covered
about anything.
some.
We
We've
should
got
probably go
a
back to
lot
Cobra
of
Kai
cool
and keep
stuff
it
here.
light, right?
Would you say?
So we can always go back to Cobra Kai and keep it a little light too.
No, I've loved this conversation. And having said that, though, we are going to say goodbye to the audience right now. I thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of Pop and Prose. And I hope you look for Joe's new book. Again, it's called Darkness Calls. It comes out on March 4th. Please follow Joe on social media. Follow me on social media, too. I've also got a website. It's buddygotwrites.com. You can find me on Substack, Blue Sky. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Yeah. Goodreads. Anyway, I'm out there. Joe's out there too. So thanks again, Joe. Thank you so much for being on the show. I've had a blast talking with you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate all that you do. I wish you the best with the new podcast, and what an honor to be the first guest. And thank you
Oh,
for everyone listening all the way to the end. Subscribe, stay tuned. There's a lot of good stuff coming your way.
oh, thank you very much, Joe. All right, everyone, take care. Have a wonderful day. See ya.